Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, the state of California takes a huge step forward in protecting its Sikh population as a new bill to train emergency services to recognise and deal with India's transnational repression is introduced. Meanwhile, after our story covering deported Sikhs having their turbans forcibly removed, Sikh organisations have now written to the Trump administration demanding the offensive practice ceases. And also on today's show, what is Narendra Modi doing about his country's pharmaceutical companies running riot, making millions fueling West Africa's opioid crisis? And the tiny village that's become India's YouTube capital. All this and more on today's show, but joining me, as always, for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus. I hope you had a great weekend, and for our viewers out there, all the same, I hope you enjoyed yourself. If you're in the Metro Vancouver area, you probably got a little rusty with all the rain, but other than that, it's been a great weekend all the same, Angus.
Indeed, wet here too, unfortunately. But James and I, despite that, together, we'll be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And of course, as usual, we'll be taking a look at loads of great comments at the end of the show, which have been filling up below the videos. So thank you, as always, for those. Right, James, let's get the show underway. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
In India, central India, actually, there's a small town by the name of Tulsi, and it is being dubbed India's internet YouTube capital. It's a very interesting story, and I thought I'd share it with you because I was just fascinated by it. And it also gives a bit more idea for our viewers as to how impactful and how far a reach that you can grab with YouTube or other social media. Now, this small village is a small farming community, and it is, as I said, just in the central area of India. It's a small community with only maybe about 4,000 residents. And over 25% of the residents now are involved in YouTube video content creation. Now, this started out during the COVID-19 pandemic, where a lot of people were taking to TikTok. Now, of course, we know that since that time, TikTok was banned and people started moving over to YouTube and doing shorts. And there's several filmmakers and dancers that really weren't professionals in any regard before this, but started creating videos out on farms and other areas and just really started to create a following. Some of the people now have gotten as far as actually making it a regular income. They've been able to quit their regular jobs, while others in the community have not only taken on the revenue that they're creating from the YouTube videos alone, but also taking it and converting those viewers into customers for product lines such as hair oils and all kinds of different spices and other areas of commerce that now they've utilized that following to actually start their online retail store. So it is a really cool story. Now, one of the ladies in the community is middle-aged, not old, but, middle-aged, and she actually was loving just being in the videos and dancing, and she was called upon to be the mother in a lot of videos, playing that role. Now, people just loved having her. She just played the role so well. She was able to dance and just really act and everything. So she became one of the most popular in the village and actually started getting work outside of the village in other bigger motion picture and television productions. So it's cool how it is growing. Not only in terms of that, but in terms of the expansion of the whole industry. Now, as things continue to progress in the community, community came together and said, okay, this is getting us a lot of great exposure. But not only that, they were also tackling different issues of social problems. Now, one of those, of course, was bullying and harassment by some Hindu nationalists in the area. And they did a video about this, and it just blew up. It went viral, and they really got a great response. and just really brought a lot of attention to those social issues. Now, of course, like a lot of Indian communities, they are facing problems with crime, with youth not having enough to keep them occupied and getting into trouble and delinquency. Now, that has greatly reduced in this community because the youth are also getting involved in these videos. So the social impact is far greater than just the revenue that they're now generating. Some people are making, now to give you a concept, the average monthly income in India in US dollars is about $240 a month. Now that changes if you're in big concentrated areas like Mumbai or New Delhi and such. But on average, it's about $240 a month. And people in this community are making about $346 a month on average. They are also paying people to be in the video. So people are making it as editors, as videographers, but also as actors and dancers and that. So it's bringing all of this new revenue into the community with the new technology. So it's just amazing. And now the village actually came together, and there was Mr. Buer, who's a former collector and civil servant in the community, worked within the government and everyone, and actually built a high-end, state-of-the-art YouTube studio in the town so that everybody could use it, and it brought in the technology. So again, people are learning more about technology. They are developing a whole new ecosystem in their area to develop this, and it's really grown. It really shows, though, also not only the fact that that people can make it big on YouTube, but that there's a lot more behind the scenes. If you watch these videos and start to follow some of the channels from Tulsi, you'll see that they are well choreographed. They are written skits and different videos. So there's so many different areas that people are educating themselves about the writing, about the reading, about the scripting, about, lighting. All of these things are just awesome. Excuse me. So this is a community that's really leaned on a lot of agriculture in the past, and now it is a whole new economy that's motivating them. And one of the former politicians said that their videos are impactful with strong themes and have reached millions. Setting up a studio was a way to motivate them. And again, I think that, it works both ways, because I think that the success of the villagers and the revenue that they started to bring into the community also motivated the politicians. Just an amazing story. So if you're out there, no matter where you are, if you have a talent or if you are interested in writing and dancing and all that, it just shows the opportunities that are there. Some of these folks have followers after even just as short as a 1 year time of 20,000 followers plus, and that's enough to start making money. And then others are up over 100,000. And those are subscribers with combined views of over 1 billion in a year. So, it's just astronomical, the amount of exposure. And a lot of them are saying that it's a dream come true, that they never thought that they would be able to fulfill their creative dreams and have an outlet for their dancing and their creative expression. And this has changed all of that in this little town of 4,000 people. So it's quite inspiring. And one of the groups there is actually a young rapper, and he's looking to bring a new type of music into the community, but also to make sure the community is known for music on top of their YouTube videos. So I thought that was really cool, because it shows that they can expand it and bring in more exposure by branching out and really developing this into a full-blown community development that people are going to want to move to Tulsi. People are going to want to get involved in. It's actually spreading out to nearby villages where others are actually getting involved in the creative ends of it. So it's pretty cool. I'm going to show a quick video here of this young rapper by the name of Kadakav Kayan. I probably ruined his name. My apologies. But this is just a brief intro to one of his videos. And he is, again, just exploding in terms of performances audiences in India and online. So it's really exciting, Angus, to see how the whole community has been able to really welcome in the new technology, but to find a niche market in order to actually make that money and to make their dreams come true, essentially. So as you can see, Angus, they seem to be having a great deal of fun, which is something I've left out of that, talking about the business side, but they are just loving it. And again, it has brought down youth delinquency. It's brought a community closer together and more united. They are addressing social issues. They are bringing revenue and increasing the economic standing of the community. I mean, it is such a huge win in every sense of the word.
Indeed, it is actually a very positive story, and it's very nice to see this, particularly the young getting involved. And it's interesting. You ask your average youngster, certainly here in the UK, and I bet it's the same in Canada. What do you want to do when you grow up? I want to be a YouTube star. Now, of course, people of our generation just roll our eyes and say, yeah, right, now get a proper job. But ironically, as it turns out, many of these YouTube stars are earning an awful lot more money than many people of our generation. So, we mock at our peril. It is. India has this enormous population, 1.4 billion, a lot of which are in terrible poverty. And the barriers to entry are very low on YouTube. All you literally need, you can do it with your mobile phone and start a channel. As long as you've got internet access and a mobile phone, essentially you can start a YouTube channel and become a star. And of course, the advantage in India is your audience, I suppose the Hindi-speaking audience, is the vast majority of India, a population of 1.4 billion, the majority of which speak Hindi. So again, immediately you've already got an enormous potential market. More so than even actually, ironically, the English-speaking world. So it's a huge opportunity for the youth of India to get themselves out of poverty. Now, of course, we are talking the minority, but still, every dollar that comes in is a dollar. Now, that's the positive side. Unfortunately, there is a negative side to all this. There's a little bit more of a sinister story to this, as always, when it comes to India. Of course, it's a huge opportunity, but not for all. Because, of course, India is very, very tightly controls its internet. More so, obviously, than the West. It calls itself a democracy, yet it restricts access to, of course, many YouTube channels. It restricts access to all sorts of media. It keeps a very tight control of its own domestic media, the Godi media as it's known. Which means that it is not a free country. It is not a free and democratic nation. And it means, yes, anybody can start a YouTube channel as long as it aligns with our own view of the world, or the Modi view of the world, and the BJP/RSS view of the world. So unfortunately, we can all very well say to people in the Punjab, rise up and start a YouTube channel, go pro-Khalistan, have a pro-Khalistan YouTube channel. Well, guess what will happen if you start a pro-Khalistan YouTube channel in Punjab? You'll not only find yourself banned, you'll probably find yourself arrested for secessionism and sent to jail on the other side of India, like poor Amritpal Singh. So unfortunately, there is a dark side to this. Now, we of course are banned as a channel in India. There's a clue in the article you posted up there, James, that India is one of YouTube's largest audiences. Well, YouTube, of course, owned and controlled by Google, does have an awful lot of Indian employees from the Indian diaspora who are likely working as agents for the Indian government. And therefore, it's no surprise that a channel like ours suddenly got demonetized as well as banned. So not only has the Indian government banned us from broadcasting into India, they've also ensured that we are demonetized on YouTube. Well, I mean, that says it all, really. And the only other countries that I can think of that does that are China and Russia. Russia, likewise, has its own what they call the single register, which is a list of URLs, websites, and a list of YouTube channels which it bans. So there you go, 3 totalitarian regimes, very comfortable bedfellows, India, China and Russia. So if anybody has any doubt about India's democratic credentials, well, only look at its bedfellows when it comes to the media, Russia and China. So unfortunately, James, yeah, whilst this is a very positive story on the face of it, you only need to dig, as usual, just beneath the surface when it comes to India to find a very sinister, different story.
Absolutely, but and in some ways that makes it even more inspiring that they were able to break through that noise and the barriers that are in place by the India government to make themselves successful. And again, as you said, they have to be very aware of what they are posting. They have to be aware of any type of editorial comment that not only is spoken but could be derived from actions in the video. So it's very careful how they have to choreograph everything within the videos. But again, congratulations to them. I think it's a great story, but it also shows that even though people are worried about Khalistan being landlocked when it happens, is that there's so much opportunity. They don't need to necessarily be at the seaports. They can create tech industry. They can create an entertainment industry. They can create a lot of opportunities for themselves as a nation. And we know that the Sikh community is very good at enterprise, at entrepreneurship, and building things with their bare hands. And I don't just mean physical structures, but also businesses, and that could include technology. So it just shows that the way that people are thinking that they won't be able to build a strong economy, I think those are the people that are thinking in yesterday's terms, not looking forward to what AI and technology can bring for an economy in the future, Angus.
Indeed, absolutely right. As I say, it's a positive story. Unfortunately, there's always a sinister bent to it. But good luck to all those budding YouTubers in India. We look forward to seeing their channels. Indeed, we do.
All right, but on less of a positive note, we're going to move forward here with other revenue that's coming into the country of India, but at the expense and lives of a lot of people in in West Africa, but also what we call spillage in North America and probably over in Europe as well, being when a company loses inventory that may be internal thefts or other reasons and other sources of loss, that becomes a problem too. So it is, although this company, a big pharmaceutical company called Aviol, is providing all of these opioids manufactured in India, shipped to the West Africa regions, there is, of course, the impact on the local community as well. Now, the problem here is that it has become such huge business that the pharmaceutical companies that look like they are completely legitimate and doing business as most pharmaceutical companies could under certain regulations, but that's not the case here when you look at Aviol, and there are others, but this one here caught my eye because BBC Investigations did a great story and a great documentary on this company and undercover investigation. They really went deep into it. And I'll touch on some of the points here, but I really encourage you to go onto the BBC and take a look at this documentary because I think that it is really eye-opening as to how companies are looking at it as a new age of business to supply opioids and other pharmaceuticals that are banned in so many nations, such as this one. They're manufacturing something called tepentanol, as well as crispodrol. And these ones here are opioids and muscle relaxants that are so addictive they're banned in Europe. And they are shipping these out by the millions of doses into West African countries so that they can target that percentage of about 5 million people who they estimate are addicted to opioids in that country. Now, they are cheap, they are readily available, and that makes them a go-to for people with addiction issues. Now, the overdose risks are still greatly increased because these are not regulated, they are sent out in the guise of being properly vetted and licensed pharmaceuticals with slight changes to or variations to the content and the makeup of the drugs. But at the end of the day, they are still killing people. They are taking lives, but they're being shipped under packaging and labels of reputable drugs or accepted drugs. And this is where these CEOs and directors of the companies, such as the one gentleman on the screen now, they are just looking at it, and I'll show you a clip in a moment from the documentary where he just basically says, hey, it's business. We know that it's going to kill them. They know it's going to hurt them. But hey, it's just business. We need to make money. And that is how cold and callous that these CEOs and company directors are. They are just basically drug dealers with a shirt and tie. And it is killing people. When you look at areas in which they are sending them, it's Nigeria, it is Ghana, it is, just so many different areas that it's just regions that are without the ability to really crack down to the levels in which they need to. And that's where there also has to be some liability and responsibility taken by Narendra Modi and the BJP government and the India Security and Policing Service to stop the outflow of these drugs, to stop these factories that are shipping out just millions of pills a day to kill people around the world. And that is just a disgusting way to build your economy and to build your personal wealth. But again, we know that people that are involved in this are not people with scruples. They are not people with ethics and morals. And at that point, they are bringing in approximately $28 billion per year US in these illicit drug sales. And again, at the cost of the lives of people around the world, the opioid crisis has reached every country on the planet, and any country that says that there is no drug crisis in their country are the countries that are burying numbers, in my estimates anyway. That it is just not right to put your head in the sand like an ostrich and ignore the problem, because it is there, it is worldwide, and as long as it's being allowed to operate without recourse, then it's going to get worse and worse, and more lives are going to be lost. And that is where we are seeing the growth of the opioid and the illegal substances with criminality, with gangs, even in some countries funding cartels and the rebel groups as well as political factions. So it is so far reaching. Let's take a look at this quick intro video for the BBC documentary.
Crisis. The task force is here to arrest one of the drug dealers.
Thousands of lives ruined by powerful and illegal pills, packaged as medicines, but sold on the streets. We set out to track the opioid route.
Tramadol.
Which is illegal. And it leads back to my home country. Where do they come from?
India.
No one has ever exposed the pharmaceutical executives behind this deadly trade.
Yes.
5 million tablets.
So which companies are making and shipping these pills? Do they know they're driving a public health crisis? And who are the men making a killing at the expense of innocent people's lives?
It's very hard to found the end. I think this is wickedness.
BBC Eye Investigations goes undercover to expose India's opioid kings.
But now they deceive us.
That executive there was by the name of Vinod Sharma, and he's the director of Avil Pharmaceuticals. And he just right there in the interview says, of course, it was a hidden camera. He didn't realize he was being interviewed. But he just right openly says they know it's bad for them. We know people are dying. But hey, this is business and we're making money, and that's what we are here to do. So just the callousness and the total lack of concern of the lives they are taking, Angus, is just phenomenal. And for them to be allowed to carry on business in such a large capacity, India should be ashamed of themselves.
It's a shocking story, this, but somehow it's sort of unsurprising. Well done to the BBC for highlighting this. This is the BBC at its best when it does its investigative journalism. The BBC has a very interesting relationship, to put it mildly, with the Indian government. The BBC does have a large presence in India, but it's fallen foul of Modi and the BJP in recent years. For example, it did another documentary that was very critical of Narendra Modi. It did basically hold Narendra Modi up to the spotlight. Now, fortunately, the BBC is quite a powerful body. Ultimately, it is still only allowed to get involved in India under the Indian government's consent. So it treads a very, very fine line. But certainly when it crossed that line as far as Modi was concerned, and it did a documentary critical of the Modi regime, it found that documentary immediately banned, and the BBC was in trouble. So, once again, they come up with a fascinating investigative piece of journalism. One wonders how the BJP government are feeling when they see this one, because of course the spotlight does, of course, immediately, as you rightly say, James, turn on the Modi government. Why is the Modi government not doing anything about this? These are Indian pharmaceutical giants that are selling their drugs illegally into other nations and causing massive social problems in these other countries. Here, of course, we're talking West Africa, whether it's Ghana or Nigeria, etc. But, of course, reference the drug companies now in trouble in the United States that have been caught doing effectively the same sort of thing. They're feeding the opioid crisis in the United States by supplying these precursor drugs to fentanyl, the same family of drugs. So these pharmaceutical companies in India are running riot. They are, as I said in the introduction, making millions, if not tens of millions, of dollars through illegal activity. But why is the Modi government doing nothing about it, or very little about it? Well, there's a clue there, James, I think in your article. These companies are generating over $28 billion of revenue each year. That is an enormous amount. And a country like India, that has such deep poverty, and of course a lot of India does not generate tax. It doesn't generate a tax income because these people are not earning enough money to generate tax, a large part of the population. So the Indian government needs to raise taxes from wherever it can get it. And when it can get a large slice of this $28 billion revenue coming from overseas, that's valuable money coming from overseas, of course, why would it want to close that down? Why would it want to restrict that massive flow of effectively laundered tax money coming from these pharmaceutical companies? So, James, as far as I'm concerned, the Modi government are very slow and deliberately slow and reluctant, I would say, to even do anything about this until it absolutely has to, because it's making too much money through the tax revenues.
But yeah, it really leaves the question also how much money is being brought in off the books in terms of paying backroom deals, bribes, and other criminality that takes it to much higher levels than just the CEOs and directors of the corporation, but also those in regulatory, law enforcement, and political circles. The question is there.
Indeed, actually, that's a question that often gets raised by many of our commenters, and that is the level of corruption in India, which, of course, is pretty sizable. So, as you rightly say, James, very likely a lot of people involved in that chain of money, as they say, follow the money. Right, let's move on to my first story. We're going to cross over the Atlantic to the United States and California. And a piece of legislation, a new bill, has been proposed by a Democrat Senator, Senator Caballero for the Democrats. And this relates, of course, to transnational repression, which, of course, has been a huge issue, particularly in North America. And Senator Caballero has, under instructions effectively from the Sikh community, has proposed a really powerful piece of legislation, which is to ensure that all the local, the Californian emergency services are both aware of and trained to deal with transnational repression. Now, transnational repression, of course, takes many forms, but it's important that local law enforcement, local, or essentially all the local state bodies are aware of what it is, what it means, because of course it's a relatively new term for many people, certainly here in Europe and across North America, this transnational repression. It has, of course, I suppose, always existed, but it's certainly ramped up significantly since India started really clamping down on the Khalistan movement in recent years. So this Senate bill, which has been introduced into the California legislature, it says, under existing law, the California Emergency Services Act, it establishes the Office of Emergency Services and vests the office with responsibility for the state's emergency and disaster response services for all sorts of areas. And but this new bill would require this Office of Emergency Services through the California Specialized Training Institute to develop transnational repression recognition and response training. So, okay, this bill goes on to describe basically what is transnational repression. For the purposes of the law, it states that transnational repression against individuals and organisations that live outside their countries of origin, prominent or vocal anti-regime figures and persons who provide aid and support to dissidents and religious and ethnic minority communities is a human rights violation. So it sets out very clearly, firstly, who it's against, and of course when we talk about Khalistan campaigners, it's very clearly designed to include them, but of course organisations as well. And it sets out very clearly that it is a human rights violation. That seeks to stifle dissent, enhance control over exile, activist, emigrant and diaspora communities. So again, it's very clear who this is written for. Now, transnational repression is any action taken by government officials or their representatives or proxies, etc. And these include acts such as extrajudicial killings, and of course we're talking Hardeep Singh Nijjar, amongst others, physical assaults, unexplained disappearances, physical or online surveillance, so of course it then jumps over into the digital domain there as well, targeted surveillance, spyware, etc., etc. Now, transnational repression is a threat to individuals, democratic institutions, the exercise of rights and freedoms, and national security and sovereignty. So that's quite powerful because it's basically saying, again, that the US law, certainly Californian law, is going to recognise the fact that these actions of the Indian government are a threat to not just individuals, but it's a threat to democracy, it is a threat to the exercise of free rights and freedoms, and of course it has a domestic threat to US sovereignty. So again, it sets out how powerful this bill could be. The spread of digital technologies provides new tools for censoring, surveilling and targeting individuals. And this in turn can lead to physical attacks and coercion by proxy in the real world. So what it's saying, it's recognising that this massive Hindutva army online, for example, do intimidate and harass particularly the Khalistan community, but also the Sikh community as a whole generally. And this does in turn lead from the digital domain into real world attacks, because it can encourage many in the Indian diaspora to attack the Sikh community as well. We've seen that recently, for example, those Mandir, when the Sikhs were peacefully protesting outside the Mandirs in Canada, the Hindu population were motivated into attacking those peaceful demonstrations. So it continues to say authoritarian actors routinely attempt to deter and silence the voices of dissent or dissident and exile communities at various forums. It is the policy of the state of California to protect these people and these organisations against transnational repression, to pursue criminal prosecutions against those who perpetrate this, to provide support services for the victims, to meaningfully hold accountable foreign governments engaged in transnational repression. There's a key word there, meaningful, meaningfully hold accountable. Now, what this is saying, and it's important because this word meaningful means we won't just pay lip service to this. We won't just like say, okay, we recognise it, and then let's move on. Meaningful means to actually do something about it, not just recognise it, but to actually act on it, to do something. And that's why that word is particularly significant in that phrase. And then to coordinate actions to enhance and complement any federal laws or regulations related to it. So again, it's to ensure that the emergency services will provide their full assistance to ensure that law is enacted, is created to prevent it wherever it needs to be prevented. So what it also then says is that the Office of Emergency Services will develop a transnational repression recognition and response training program. So again, all people who serve in these emergency services will be specifically trained to recognise and then to deal with transnational repression. And it then goes on to say how it will help identify how it happens, identify specifically what it is, because they need to know specifically how it differentiates itself from other crimes. And then, of course, it will train its people in how to prevent it, how to report it, very important that it's reported, and, of course, how they will respond to these elements of transnational repression. So, James, this is, again, on the face of it, it's a very dry legal document, but in reality, in practice, this is a very powerful move by Senator Marie Caballero, because this is going to put into law, again, this sits alongside many other pieces of legislation now entering US legislation that is firstly recognising transnational repression for exactly what it is. It is a threat to democracy. Secondly, it is providing enormous protection for the Sikh community within California. And then one hopes that this state legislation will then spread across to other states and become federal law across the United States. And thirdly, it is how emergency services will deal with these issues. They will be specifically trained to recognise it and to actually act to deal with it, to act against it, and of course to protect the Sikh community. So very good news this, James. The Sikh community in California can now feel another layer of law is in the process of being instituted that will provide another layer of protection towards the community.
Well, and I think it's an important document, an important piece of legislation to move forward, especially given the time, Angus, because we're only about 4 weeks away from the Khalistan referendum vote in Los Angeles. And I think that this goes a long way to serve notice to India and any of the Indian nationals and extremists that may be looking to stir things up at the Khalistan referendum vote in Los Angeles. This really puts them on notice that the government is watching it. They are taking this seriously, and they will not tolerate any type of transnational repression or foreign interference when it comes to their citizens. And so I think the timing of it is very essential as well, Angus.
Indeed it is. So we'll keep an eye on this bill. It is likely to be passed into law. And as I say, the hope is it will spread across other states, particularly those other states that contain large Sikh communities. So we will keep you informed, as I say. But staying with US legislation, we reported over the last week or two about the illegal immigrants who Trump under the ICE team has deported and is now deporting in ever increasing numbers. And of course, part of that illegal migration that is being repatriated back to India does include an element of Sikhs from the US, and they are being deported back to the Punjab. And one of the stories that we did report on last week was a particularly concerning story, and that is where the US law enforcement, as part of this repatriation, have, as part of a policy, they've forcibly removed the Dastaars, the turbans, from these Sikhs. Now, the reason behind this is a simple practical reason, despite the fact it's deeply offensive from a religious perspective from the Sikh community. They've actually had to remove the turbans as a form of protection for these individuals, because of course it is quite common in law enforcement that many perpetrators do have some level of mental illness, mental problems, which means that they are a risk to themselves. They can commit suicide, and of course they will find any means possible to commit suicide, and that often takes the form of hanging themselves, unfortunately, whether it's through a belt, a shoelace. But law enforcement have recognised that turbans are a potential danger, because of course a turban, a Dastaar, can be unwrapped and used as a like a bed sheet, effectively, to hang yourself, of which unfortunately there are many cases of prisoners hanging themselves using bed sheets. So it has been this sort of protective mechanism. But unfortunately, the side effect of that is it has become a deeply offensive situation for those of the Sikh religion. So as a result, and the Sikh community has combined together to say, look, this has to stop. We need to find another solution. And the Sikh Caucus Committee of the United States, they have got together and they've combined the voice of the Sikh community. And one of their co-founders, Pritpal Singh, has organised a letter to go to the Trump organisation to say, look, please, can you deal with this in a more sensitive manner, because you can't let this go on. It is deeply offensive. Now, this is a little bit of a tricky line to tread, because of course, essentially, these Sikhs are illegal immigrants. They have actually broken US law. So they are, by literal definition, they are criminals. And so, of course, standing up for these criminals, of course, these criminals have a right to legal representation, etc. But of course, the Sikh organisations have a very delicate situation to tread here, because, of course, these are illegals, they are being deported, but they still have rights. So they have got to stand up for these illegal immigrants, but at the same time, they've also not got to sort of appear on the face of it to side too strongly with them, because essentially they are criminals. So again, they've had to word this very, very carefully. And what Pritpal Singh has said on X, he said, look, American Sikh organisations respectfully, very, very carefully chosen term there, respectfully urge the Honourable Secretary Noam to prevent or to stop this forced turban removal, because they say it undermines religious freedoms enshrined in our constitution. We stand ready to partner with the government on solutions that uphold dignity and faith through deportation, because respecting due process is what truly makes America great. And now the actual letter itself, and I'll just quickly flick through this letter. And it is addressed to Kristi Noem, who's one of the new appointees of the Trump administration. She is a Secretary of Homeland Security. And the letter goes, first of all, it starts off, congratulations on your appointment. Of course, it's laying its respectful credentials out very clearly. But then it says, our community of Sikh Americans appreciates all the actions of the Department of Homeland Security to help us keep us safe. We have ongoing threats to our community, American taxpayers on American soil, and your department is always very responsive. So again, it's very respectful. It's very, I would call it obsequious language, but for a very good reason. It's sort of bowing down, saying, we appreciate everything you're doing, but... and it then goes into the but. Today, Sikh Americans are concerned about reports in the media from India saying that these Sikh deportees have had to remove their turbans. Then it explains that, look, wearing these turbans, it is extremely important. It is an important religious and cultural part of our society. They are a visible expression of our faith. Now, whilst this may seem like a procedural detail, and again, this comes back to what I was saying earlier, it is required through protection. Forcing Sikhs to remove turbans is eroding support for your work in our community and calls into question freedoms guaranteed in the US Constitution. So again, it's very cleverly worded this. It's saying, look, we do understand that you've got a really important job to do. We totally support you in your job. But you must understand that by doing this, you're actually you're alienating the Sikh community from supporting you. So again, it's very cleverly approached this. So it says, therefore, we respectfully urge your department to review and amend current deportation procedures to honour our religious rights as Sikhs. And we further call on you to partner with our community to provide appropriate head coverings for deportees, safeguarding their dignity throughout the process. So they must have been watching our show, James, where we said, look, you've got to provide an alternative to the Dastaars and the turbans. And then
absolutely, Angus.
Then it signs off, our community stands ready to support these vital changes, reaffirming our nation's unwavering commitment to human dignity and the principles that make America great. Thank you for your prompt attention. So again, it's a perfectly worded letter. It is actually saying, look, we totally understand that you have a very difficult job to do, and we do stand with the law, and absolutely what you're doing is absolutely right. But at the same time, please do pay respect to our community. If you want to keep our community on one side, yes, we recognise that these people are breaking US law, but you also must respect the US Constitution that gives our freedom. Even as a criminal, you still have a human right under the US Constitution to practice your religion, and that those religious sensitivities must, of course, be respected. So, James, I think it's a very clever letter, and I think hopefully this will change the situation as it stands.
Yeah, and as you said, Angus, it was very diplomatically written. It was well worded. It was non-confrontational. I think that it was a very well-crafted letter that really drove the point home. And one of the concerns that I see is that it's not even so much when they're in custody. It seems to be the removal of the turbans before they take flight. Now, we already know that they are shackling at the hands and the wrists of all passengers on these military flights, and then they are locked, or the shackles are attached to the aircraft itself through another lock. So I just don't see the threat on these aircraft of being allowed to keep their turbans on. I think that it is almost just a message they're trying to send of disrespect to a certain community. And I don't mean the Sikh community, I mean the criminal community, that you break the laws, you come into our country illegally, we're not going to respect you. We're just going to take you like anybody else and get you the hell out of our country. And I think that might be a part of that message.
Indeed. And there is an interesting little addendum to this story, which I couldn't resist sharing. When I saw this post on X, of course, there were lots of comments after it. And there was an interesting comment from supposedly a Sikh, a chap called Gurinder Singh Mann. And he said, look, we Sikhs also urge the Department of Homeland Security to arrest nefarious elements like Sikhs for Justice General Counsel, of course, that's Gurpatwant Singh Pannoon, and various others who are supporting Khalistani terrorism in cities like Los Angeles and are making Sikhs' lives harder in the community. And I thought, wow, God, that's a pretty strong message from somebody within the Sikh community, really damning the Khalistan movement. I thought, well, that's quite strange. And I looked at this guy, Gurinder Singh Mann, and he calls himself proud American Indian and Sikh. I thought, oh, good heavens, maybe there is a large part of the Sikh community that really is powerfully anti-Khalistan. But then, and I'm sure our audience will be familiar with this, I just looked down Gurinder Singh Mann's X timeline and the comments that he's posted up. And he's posted up as a clue recently. He posted up, he shared a post where Kash Patel, the new leader of the FBI, who as many have pointed out, is probably a Hindutva sympathiser. But he posted up, he shared this very supportive, saying, this is great. Anyone who thinks the American dream is dead, look right here. We're talking to a first-generation Indian kid who's about to lead the law enforcement community in the greatest nation on God's earth. So the clue starts falling into place here. So we have a Hindutva sympathiser who this Gurinder Singh Mann thinks is a great idea. And if you follow down his timeline, there's all sorts of similar, including Tulsi Gabbard, who we also know is an RSS sympathiser, and many other from the Indian diaspora who are taking these powerful positions in the Trump administration, RSS sympathisers. This Gurinder Singh Mann is posting up loads and loads of Hindutva propaganda. So, of course, Mr. Gurinder Singh Mann is more likely just another one of these, as we call these, fake Sikhs. Unfortunately, I don't think he's a genuine member of the Sikh community. I think he's probably another Hindutva bot account, James.
Absolutely. It looks like an avatar creation for his image there, not a real image either of him. So, that there is a telltale as well. A lot of times people that are using bots and fake identities to go online and spread false narratives use these animated characters as opposed to their real images. So
exactly that, James. An AI-generated avatar. If you're a real Sikh, why not show up your real face? And of course you don't. So there you go. Right, James, on that note, let's move on to our comments column. And I did another fascinating podcast discussion with Bhajan Singh Binder last Friday. And we talked about this fascinating character, Maharaj Singh, who was actually one of the final holdouts of the Sikh Empire. He was an extraordinary character. He was 80 years old at the fall of the Sikh Empire. And he was, again, whilst the rest of the Sikh Empire finally relented to the might of the British Empire in 1849, he held out for several more months, about 6 months beyond the final surrender. And he was still trying to rally Sikhs to fight against the British Empire, but ultimately he had to bow to the inevitable. He, in fact, was betrayed, and he was arrested by the British authorities, and he was shipped out to Singapore. And this was a typical tactic at the time, where the British Empire realised that the best way to remove any possible threat to their control of India was to remove the key individuals far away, to send them far away. And they removed Bhai Maharaj Singh to Singapore, to Outram Park Jail, this dreadful jail in Singapore. And Singapore in 1850 at the time was basically a mosquito-infested swamp. It was a pretty terrible place to be sent to, and that's where they sent Bhai Maharaj Singh. And he spent his final years there as an 80-something-year-old man, and he resisted all the way, and he became almost this legendary figure in this prison, and he was kept in solitary confinement. He had no daylight. He essentially just died of cancer in his prison. But he resisted all the way to the very end, even I have to say, to the respect of many of the British. They realised this guy was something special. So do watch that podcast. It's fascinating. And KS Sandhu and Baljit Mataru both said, wow, yeah, absolutely, wow. It was a fascinating, revealing interview. And it just shows, actually, and I said it, I think I said in the discussion, just how ruthless the British Empire were at that time. This is how empires were built. And unfortunately, in modern day society, where we've become a little bit soft and a bit cotton wool, we don't realise that to build an empire, what it takes an awful lot of ruthless actions. There is no other way, James, and that is the only way that an empire can be built. It is built on sheer simple ruthlessness, and that is why an 86-year-old, as he was when he died, an 86-year-old hero ended his days, because it took that sort of ruthlessness to prevent him becoming a threat to the British Empire.
Absolutely, and I mean, you can go back, whether it's the British Empire, whether it's the Sikh Empire, or so many others, and some of the brutal truths that come out of it that they had to endure in order to conquer and to keep their empire safe. I mean, yeah, it's just amazing, Angus, and just the sheer dedication of people like him really show how devoted that national pride can be, or the fight for the future can be.
And then one of the other characters who suffered a sort of similar fate, but he was shipped far away, was Dulip Singh. He was the son of the final of Ranjit Singh, Maharaja Ranjit Singh, the great heroic character who built the empire and ruled the empire until his death shortly before the end of the empire. But his son, Dulip Singh, he became Maharaja at the age of 5, and at the age of 10, the empire finally fell. But when the British, through the East India Company, took control of the Sikh Empire and annexed the Punjab, Dulip Singh, as a young boy, was taken control of by the British. And he, fortunately for him, actually, unlike Bhai Maharaj Singh, who was sent to Singapore prison, Dulip Singh was shipped off back to England. But again, it was the same thing. Dulip Singh, being the son of Ranjit Singh, was a potential threat. He could be the rallying figure around which the Sikhs could re-emerge and take on the British again in the future. So the British, again ruthlessly, shipped Dulip back to England. But they gave him a different fate. Instead of imprisoning him, because he was a young boy, they put him into an English family, an aristocratic English family, and they brought him up. He converted to Christianity. He was given a stipend as annual income from the royal family, and he was eventually actually given an estate in East Anglia in the UK. So he was basically seduced with money and riches and what have you, away from being loyal to Punjab, although he did come back to it later in his life. But that was the story of Dulip Singh. And Danny says, look, why could the Ahluwalia Sikh royal descendants not rise up to take second in command after Duleep? Well, I think the answer to that, Danny, is that there was no chance. They just couldn't do it. The British Empire was so in control and so powerful of that region at the time. It would have been impossible. All that would have happened is they would have just been defeated, like the might of the Sikh Empire was in the end. And I think that really is the answer to that. I think there's no other answer to that. Great in theory, particularly as we look retrospectively. I think in practice, the Sikh, all the descendants of the royalty, the Sikh royalty, they just couldn't do it. They were defeated. They were a defeated race. Simple as that. So, but then just follow the Duleep story. Mukhtar Singh says, as you rightly say, Duleep was kidnapped and imprisoned in the UK for the rest of his life. And Satwinder Bharat follows this, and it's a very sad story. It's a sort of, on the face of it, it's a sad story. He was put in a grave outside a church in England, in Elvedon actually, in East Anglia, right, which is against the Sikh religion. He wasn't cremated. So again, his story was that he did actually marry in the end, and he had children. His wife sadly died, and he himself, I think he did remarry, and then he eventually did die in 1879, I think. But as you rightly say, he did actually convert back to Sikhi in his latter life. Right. Basically, he did try and, in his later life, he did try and resurrect the Sikh movement, and he failed, and it just got very complicated. But basically, as you rightly say, Satwinder, he was actually buried. He was not cremated, which again, he did revert back to Sikhi at the end of his life, but so that did sit against it. So again, Jez, it all comes back to the ruthlessness of the British Empire. They certainly kept him on side by converting him to Christianity, removing him far from the Punjab, and he led a slightly poignant life in the end.
Absolutely, and it just shows how much more to history there is that so many people just don't realize. And that's not only us as, the white Western people, but I think that a lot of the Sikh youth throughout Canada, throughout the US, throughout the UK, I think that they are missing a bit of that culture and that history when it comes to the depths of the stories that they may not have heard before. So I think that's a value as well. And I think that we need to always remember people like this in all cultures, all parts of the world, all empires, to really give honor to what they've contributed overall, Angus.
Indeed, and I think the message I particularly took from this, and I refer to it several times, is the ruthlessness of the British Empire. But that is what it took to build an empire, and that is what it takes for any empire. Whether it's the Mughals, whether it's the Roman empires, every empire has had to be totally ruthless. Yeah. And whilst we in the West certainly now have become pretty soft and complacent and self-indulgent, and certainly we've moved so far away from that sort of ruthlessness, we do tend to forget that outside in the world, out there still, there are these ruthless people still exist, and there are new empires yet to come. And it's likely that we in the West will get taken over by these empires, or the modern equivalent, the 21st century equivalents of these empires. And to me, it's a bit of a wake-up call, saying, look, these empires never go away. There will always be future empires, because they were driven by these 1 in 10 in humanity who were driving these empires. But anyway, that's a whole different topic. Let's move on, James. And John Calo, he loves our news. Thank you very much, John Calo, for this going. But what he says, Sikhs haven't never been in the lobbying system. They're just in a soft manner, but always believe in serving humanity. Yeah, this is interesting because, Sikhs, as you say, you say they're not involved in lobbying. We're just, they have a soft power. They just always serve humanity. And by just simply serving humanity, that they are improving humanity, and the Sikh agenda is therefore just spread in an almost subtle, soft way. Now, I would actually slightly disagree with that, and I'll say what the Sikh community have realised is this is not working. There are too many powerful forces, and I talk about ruthless people. There are ruthless people out there in the form of Hindutva, for example. These are the new empire builders. This is actually a perfect example. Hindutva and RSS are the latest empire builders. They have that that ruthless edge. We talk about it on a daily basis. And the only way to counter this now is not by sitting back and just being soft and just being good to everybody. That's not working, because the Sikh community is being walked over by these ruthless people. So it realised this, fortunately, and now the organisations are uniting the voice, and they are now actually taking the fight back to, in a peaceful way, in a democratic way, but they are taking the fight to Hindutva by lobbying, through political lobbying, and it is actually working, as we talk about now regularly. For example, the legislation I talked about today, it is necessary, unfortunately, James. The community has to do this, whether it likes it or not. This is the only way to counter these ruthless forces, the new empire builders of Hindutva, James.
Absolutely. And that's, I think that's a part of where the community has been very strong in what you say is their silent motivation by actually being a part of the communities and acting, as opposed to standing there and trying to lobby for change. They've done it by leadership and by example, Angus.
Absolutely. And 5AAB's comment, this comes back to your story, James, the Canadian Liberal who had to stand down after using some pretty appalling language. And 5AAB says, look, these racist cowards think they can run their mouths like their mates in India. And as you say, you only need to look at the language used by politicians in India that will probably make us blush. But as you rightly say, in a real democratic country, we just don't use that same sort of language. And that is absolutely right. You use that sort of language, and some of his tweets were pretty offensive. You just do not get to stand in public office, as in contrast to obviously what happens in India, James.
Absolutely. And you're supposed to be there to represent all of the constituents in an equal and honest manner, and with full transparency. And that was just disgusting to hear him talk like that and to describe people in such a manner. So yeah, definitely not only should he be tossed out of any political party, but I think that we're going to have to watch what he does in his personal life too. And when I say that, I mean, if he's going to move from politics to business, I think a lot of people are going to boycott that business.
Absolutely right. Now, in a nod to Critics' Corner, unfortunately, we're obviously not trying hard enough, James. We've had very few entries in our Critics' Corner recently, which is slightly disappointing. But at least Anonymous does make a small contribution by saying propaganda. Lol. Well, James, as we often say when this comment comes up on a regular basis, yeah, so what? All we're doing is we're bringing the truth. We're bringing the alternative narrative to the Indian narrative, are we not, James?
Absolutely, but it's always fun to get the Critics' Corner going. So come on, folks, even if you disagree with us, by all means, feel free to speak your voice. That's what we're here for, to have a healthy conversation on both sides.
Indeed. And Anonymous, as we always say, look, if you think we're spouting propaganda, explain what we're saying. Tell us what we're saying is untrue. Give some examples of anything that we say that is untrue. And if indeed we are wrong, we will always be the first to admit it. But unfortunately, you might not like what we do, but what we do is spread the truth. And Knockdown says, look, as a complete contrast, and this really goes back to Anonymous's criticism, Knockdown says there's nothing that comes out of Indian government's mouth that can be trusted. So in other words, if you want propaganda, you only need to look at the Gaudy media, James.
Absolutely. And let's face it, I mean, if everybody liked what I said when I opened my mouth, I wouldn't be divorced.
Exactly. Know the feeling there. So indeed, so well done, Knockdown. You're absolutely bang on. I think that in itself is a perfect riposte to Anonymous's comment about our propaganda.
That's
and then
right.
the final comment really just sums it all from Sam Singh. Thank you, Sam Singh, for this. Always on the point and truthful. Thank you both. That is what really we are all about. We are actually, well, we hope we are on the point, but certainly what we do hope to do is bring our audience the truth, is to bring that counter to the dreadful narrative, the fake and twisted and manipulated narrative that comes out of India. And that is the reason that we are banned, referring back to our stories earlier in the show, is we're banned because we bring the truth. We bring the uncomfortable and painful truth to the Indian population. For those few who actually manage to get access to our channel, yes, we are banned. And as we say all the time to India, what are you afraid of? Why do you ban channels like us? What are you afraid that your population might find out, James? That is what we exist for.
Absolutely. And for all the viewers out there, don't forget to share our channel with others so we can build the channel and get more people educated on what we bring to you, but also to invite them into the conversation through the comment section as well to take part.
Please do keep those comments coming in. We do appreciate them all. We do read every single one of them, and we always find them highly entertaining and more often than not highly educational as well. So please do keep those comments coming in. But unfortunately, we must wrap things up for another day. That is the end of Perspectives for another day. But do keep the comments coming in. Don't forget, you can also message us directly at message@satellitetv.com if there's anything you'd like to bring to our attention that you don't want to put in the public domain. So thank you for all your emails that we have been receiving. All appreciated. But in the meantime, that is it for another show. It is a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.